Three. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Veteran Voices in Code. I'm your host, Greg Drobny, the student recruiter for Code Platoon. And joining me today is Marion Gordon. He has done us a solid favor of not only graduating Code Platoon, but coming back to offer his thoughts on the process of becoming an alumni and going out into the world of tech after military service. So first, let me say welcome and thank you for joining us, Marion.
Thank you.
You bet. So, first question I always start off with every one of these episodes is a very simple one, but it's a direct one. What made you raise your right hand and say, I want to serve in the US military? What was it that prompted you to say, I want to do this?
Well, for me, I kind of just needed somewhere to go after high school. I didn't really have the best GPA, so I just really didn't have anything else going on. So I had a friend of mine that joined the Navy like prior to me. So he told me like, "Hey, why don't you try to join the Navy? You know, there's plenty things for you to get going in there." So I just figured, why not? So that's basically how I got in.
That's awesome. I like the simple and basic stories. So what did you decide to do in the Navy? What MOS, or I can't remember what they call it in the Navy, but what job did you end up doing?
Yeah, we call it a rate in the Navy. I was a hospital corpsman. That's what I did initially. I was actually kind of like not really too into it, as I wasn't really into blood and stuff like that, you know. But they were telling me like, hey, this is all we got. So either you take this or you take nothing. So I was like, all right. And eventually I just got used to it. So yeah,
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's great. And so how many years did you serve?
I did 8 years.
8 years. 8 years. Okay. So at some point, at 8 years in, you said, all right, this isn't for me. And you want to transition out. What compelled you to come to Code Platoon first? And then we're going to talk about the whole VR&E component after. But what compelled you to say, hey, I want to do Code Platoon? How did you even find out about it? And what made you make that decision?
Mm. So yeah, I kind of had like a really like kind of a convoluted path to get to Code Platoon. So when I was in the military, so we have this thing like a specialty of a hospital department, right? Like my specialty was a physical therapy tech. So I mostly worked in like a physical therapy with a physical therapist, helping other like service members and stuff recover from like injuries. And that's kind of the path I wanted to keep going down. I wanted to be a physical therapist. So I went and got my PTA license while I was in. Once I got out, I got a job at a hospital in Chicago. Did inpatient physical therapy over there. But then like I was also going to school to become a physical therapist. But after like working in a hospital for so long, I kind of just decided it's not really what I want to do, you know. But I had a friend that went through Code Platoon like while I was going through this process, and he kept telling me like, "Hey, why don't you check out tech? Why don't you check out tech?" But I just wasn't like into it because you know all I know was like healthcare. So I it was like a different kind of scary thing I didn't want to try to venture into. So I mean, eventually, like once I got to like me graduating school and finishing my bachelor's in kinesiology, I applied to PA school and I told myself if I don't get in, I'm gonna try tech. I'm gonna see what happens. So that's what happened. I didn't get in, so I said, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna apply to Code Platoon and see where that takes me.
Fantastic. Well, we're glad you did. I mean, I remember speaking with you a while ago about all of this, and we're glad that you made the decision at any rate. And although I think we could do a whole podcast on, similarities and differences between the medical world and tech,
Hmm.
it's decidedly less bloody and stinky in tech. I will tell anybody out there. I think this is decidedly less. You don't have to have people falling on top of you. Physical therapists can deal with that.
Hmm.
Um, we're going to set that aside for right now. We might come back to it, but you came to us through VR&E. And for those unaware, Veteran Readiness and Employment, it used to be known as Voc Rehab. When I got out in 2009, it was still called Voc Rehab. Anyone out there looking into this? And in fact, I can tell you that it is the same program, and we know this because the VA didn't even change the URL on the VR&E page. It still says Voc Rehab on the actual URL of the VA's page for it. So it's the same program basically, but it enables specifically veterans with disability ratings to obtain some type of training in order to retrain into a different field. Talk to me and tell me about, first of all, how you found out about VR&E, because it's not a very well known component of the VA. But then, second, kind of the brief outline of the process of getting through that. And then we'll kind of dig in a little bit from there.
Hmm. Right. So I didn't know much about VR&E myself either. I came out of the military with a disability rating, and I didn't really know all the benefits that were like available to me. But that same friend that told me about Code Platoon told me, oh yeah, there's also this program called VR&E. So if you don't want to use your GI Bill, you can tap into that. So, when I went to Code Platoon, they had another program going. I believe it was Vet Tech. At the
Mhm.
time that I went, Vet Tech ran out of funding.
Yep.
So I was good for Vet Tech. I had my papers and everything. I was going through the process. Right before I started, Vet Tech ran out of funding. So, I was told I had to find something else. So VR&E was just like in the back of my head, like, oh yeah, I remember that VR&E thing that he told me about. So that's basically how I got into that.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great thing to find out about. Like you said, it's not terribly well explained. It's not like a lot of people get out of the military and they have this thing that says, "Oh, you have VR&E." I talk to a number of people all the time who have no idea that VR&E exists as an option. So yes, and to add on, in case someone stumbles upon this, what Marion's saying is true. There was something called Vet Tech that was specifically designed for schools like ours. It ran out of money. It came to an end. It was always designed to come to an end. It was a 5-year pilot program. However, what we all hoped for was that it would be renewed by Congress. As of right now, it has not been. And that, as of right now, in case people stumble upon this later, is October 7th of 2024. There is a bill in Congress that would make it permanent. We're waiting on that. And at this point, we've got an election here in a month. It's not going to happen until 2025. Like everybody knows this. So anybody out there stumbles upon this, just be aware. Yes, there is something called Vet Tech out on the horizon. It might be an option. For right now, though, we're looking at VR&E. So you talked about this a second ago. You said you came out with a disability rating. My understanding, and I think this is the case now, the minimum disability rating to access VR&E is 20%. Is that your understanding as well?
I mean, it's kind of news to me. I was like, I was well above that qualification, so I really didn't know what the minimum was. But that sounds about right. Sounds pretty
Fair.
familiar.
Fair. And I don't think it's terribly well published, but my understanding is that it's a minimum threshold of a 20% disability rating. So for those, coming across this and want to know about VR&E, look deeper, but it's a lower threshold than you would think. A lot of people think that it has to be like 100% or something like that. It's definitely not. It's more like 20% or something like that. However, and this is the part that I kind of want to get into. VR&E works differently than, say, the GI Bill or Vet Tech did. It is not an automatic benefit. So tell me how you access this benefit and walk me through the steps, because I need other people are going to, we're hoping people stumble upon this and are able to figure this out as well, because it's not as simple as the GI Bill. It's not as simple as Vet Tech. You don't just go on the VA's page and just say, give me my GI Bill. It's not like that. So tell me how you actually access this program.
Right. So it was a bit of a process. I had to go to the VA website and apply just like how you do for most benefits. And then after a while, they assign you a counselor. They contact you, they set you up with an appointment. They do like a kind of like an interview basically to figure out if you qualify for this benefit. So I went through that interview and I kind of just explained like, hey, I'm in this medical field right now. I do a lot of like manual labor. Doesn't really work out for my chronic joint pains and things like that. So that's what got me in. So yeah, it was just a kind of a whole interview process. After that was done, he did some more paperwork, and then a few weeks later, I was approved.
That's great. That's great. And to follow up on what you said, my understanding is really what VR&E is about is taking somebody who has a disability and their disability basically makes it hard for them to do what their previous training was in. That's probably the best way to look at it from everything I know. And it sounds like you're saying exactly that. So someone like me, I came out as an infantryman. Well, first of all, there's not much you could do as an infantryman in the civilian world. You're out. Your training is good for nothing. But let's take something like a police officer. I have an injury. I can't be a police officer. It's physically not possible for me to be that. So I can use these funds to train into something new. Does that sound about right from what you heard?
Yeah, basically, that's basically was the gist of it. Because before I've heard people say they use it for like school, but it's really just like a job benefit, and that's kind of how I framed it to my counselor was like, I can't do the job I'm doing right now. That's why I'm trying to get into this other job that will be like it will work out for my disabilities.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're right. It can be used for school, but I think when you go into these interviews, that's really important for veterans to understand is it has to be couched in the idea of job training. I
Mm.
need something to train me into this new field. Now, let's back up a couple steps because I do want people to understand how between you filling out that form on the VA's page saying, I want to apply for this benefit and getting that interview with the counselor, what's the time frame there? How long did that take you?
Yeah, I really can't recall. I mean, I would like to say it was probably a few weeks. Yeah, I believe it was about a few weeks.
Yeah, and that's it seems to depend on the area. I talked to a lot of veterans and it seems to be anywhere from 3 to maybe 5 or even 6 weeks, depending on what area you're in. So I
Mm.
have talked to veterans before, they said they had to wait over a month. That's just something that people need to be aware of and plan for. So when you went there, now you're going through this process. They did you already have Code Platoon in mind, or did you have to pick from a selected group of schools that you could go to, or how did you approach them with Code Platoon first?
Oh yeah, I had everything ready when I went there. Because initially I was already going to go to Code Platoon with the VecTech program, so I just kind of went there and said, "Hey, I'm trying to go to school, go to training for this. This is the place I want to go." Gave them all the details, and I guess they did some research on their end to figure out where Code Platoon is, since they have like a list of pre-approved programs. And it turns out the Code Platoon it was one of them, so that worked out in my favor.
That's awesome. And yeah, I think you were definitely tracking on that at the time, and I remember this. But a note to anyone listening to this: uh, go with a plan, right? Try to have at least some options of what you want to do, rather than just having a vague like I want to go into tech and then not having any idea beyond that. Because like Marion said, it's better if you go in with a plan, and I think they're more receptive to that for sure. So you're going through Code Platoon. They pay the tuition. They take care of the tuition from VR&E. What else did they do for you? What other benefits came along with the tuition paid for?
Yeah, so there's like a substance. I have a hard time with that word. That you get an allowance basically. You get payment every month, just like the GI Bill. It's not really as much, but it's something and it helps. So you got that. Actually, I got some dental care too. While I was in the program. After I finished Code Platoon, I had some dental pain, and I was still in the process of looking for a job. I talked to my counselor, and he was like, "Yeah, you can get a free treatment at the VA." So he put in for me to do that. I went to the VA. They gave me a free round of care, and yeah.
I didn't know about that at all. That's great to hear. That's so it ups your medical benefits. In other words, like there's some additional things you can get done. That's really cool to hear. Did they, now I've heard that they'll buy you a laptop as well. Did they buy you a laptop?
I actually had one already.
You had
So
one
I
already.
have a chance to do that. Yeah.
Okay. For those, like who are researching this, we've had students come to Code Platoon who said, they didn't have a laptop, so the VA did buy them a laptop, which is something they won't do on vet tech, by the way. They'll give you the living stipend, but they won't buy you the extra supplies like that. So that's really good to know. So how did it work as you're graduating? Because it's a readiness and employment program. It's not just education, right? So what changes then at the end when you're finished with Code Platoon? You bring that to your counselor and say, "Hey, I'm done." Then what happened?
Well, then at that point, then it gets into the whole job search portion of it. So every so often you have to update your counselor with a list of jobs that you have applied for and ones that you're in the process of interviewing and ones you're waiting to get back to. So it's kind of helpful that I went through the career readiness program at Code Platoon because I used the exact same spreadsheet and just gave that to my counselor. So I don't have to do as much work.
That's super helpful. So do they give you much help, or is this just a tracking? They want to keep updated on it, or are they actually giving you employment assistance like resume coaching and things like that as well?
Well, that stuff was available to me, but I used most of that from just from Catherine and Rich at Code Platoon. So I got all that from them. I didn't really need much help from my VR&E counselor, but it was available if I needed it.
That's great to hear. And I'd like to think and hope, fingers crossed, that I think Code Platoon is doing a little better than what the VA is providing. Right. I've seen some of what they're offering for resume classes and things like that. And I think we do better. I mean, I do. I think VR&E is a great program. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to bash the VA, but things like resume coaching, it seems to be a little bit lacking, partially because, let me ask you this then. So as you're coming out, obviously you're looking for roles in tech. That's not an area where the VA is going to be a lot of assistance. I mean, if we're being honest, like they're not, they might be able to help you with federal roles. Like if you want to get a job with the VA or another federal agency, they probably have a lot of insight into how to do that. But getting a role in tech seems kind of foreign. How did that go for you regarding career services at Code Platoon?
Mm. Yeah, so yeah, like you said, the VA, it was a very foreign process to them. My counselor was kind of confused when I told him I was going through a coding boot camp and I was going to be able to get a software job after. He was kind of like, "How are you going to do that in 15 weeks?" So he just had no experience with this kind of thing before, you know. So yeah, I got all of that kind of experience from Catherine and Rich for the career readiness program at Code Platoon, and that's kind of what helped me like transition into working. My counselor, I kind of just gave him my checkups and stuff with where I'm at with things, but he didn't really have much. He didn't really have much to give me as far as like looking for tech jobs.
I kind of figured. Now, how long does you're accepted into VR&E, you come to Code Platoon, you graduate. Does VR&E stop at the point of graduation, or does it keep going and helping you until you get a job? How does that work?
No, the program still keeps going. They still check in with you to make sure that you're still doing well as far as like the job search. The payments, I believe you get like 2 more months after the program ends of payments. Um, but your communication with your counselor goes all the way up until 6 months after you're in the job. So I just
Oh, wow.
recently talked to them about maybe 2 months ago saying like, hey, I'm here at my job, everything's going well, I don't have any issues.
That's great to hear. I mean, that actually is good news, I think, because it's good that they're following up and not just, kind of kicking you to the curb just because you got a job.
Yeah.
So where did you end up working? Are you able to say that now here? And
Oh yeah, I work at Travelers. I'm in the EDP program right now currently.
fantastic. Travelers has been, for those watching, has been a great company we've worked with. We just talked to them out at Celebrate Code Platoon, and a lot of graduates there. Fantastic company. They've hired a lot of our graduates, and I can't say enough good things about our relationship with them. So overall, this process from the point that you started VR&E till right now, and because you said you just had a conversation with them, how many months has that been?
Oof. I want to say it's been like started with them in like May-ish, and I just finished with them about 2 months ago. I'll say that's like a little bit over a year. Yeah, a little bit over a year I've been working with them.
Which I think that's a good thing. I mean, I see that as a positive thing, is that they're seeing this through, right? They're seeing a lot of value there in investing in veterans to get them back in reintegrated. It's great. It's a fantastic program. But again, to those watching, it does take some time. What would you say is the hardest part of the whole process, or the most maybe frustrating? Maybe hard is not the right word, but maybe the part that you say, hey, this is kind of like what I'd like to see change about VR&E.
I would say the responsiveness from the counselors. I've heard that some counselors are better than others. My counselor, he was good, but at times he was kind of hard to get a hold of when I needed things. Like I was talking about, I had that dental care thing that I was able to get access to. That was like a few months of me trying to push him to say, hey, I need this, and eventually I got it. But yeah, just it's just probably the responsiveness. But in the end, I got the help I needed.
Sure. And that seems to be a universal, and this has been, for the record, this has been a complaint of veterans. And I don't want to say that you're complaining, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but there's been an issue that veterans have expressed since I got out in 2009, which is that VR&E counselors are not consistent. So
Mm.
the GI Bill, we get out of the military, and it doesn't matter if you're Navy, I'm Army, somebody's Air Force. The GI Bill is the GI Bill. You have how much you have, and it works at every accredited institution the same. No problem there. VR&E is this wildly inconsistent animal that nobody can, this counselor will tell you one thing, this counselor will tell you another, this counselor will approve of this program, and this counselor won't. And
Mm.
that seems to be one of the biggest issues that many veterans have had that I've spoken with is exactly that. They say, this counselor, I hear all these great things, and then I get this counselor who's missing in action. Like we don't even know what happened to this person. So you said that you had a friend tell you about VR&E. Did they go through it as well?
Yeah, he went through VR&E as well. I'm not too sure what he used it for. He did say something about using it for like education. He was going he like an associate's in like chemistry or something like that. I don't know what the end goal was, but yeah, that's what he used it for.
I have heard stories of people actually using it for a doctorate. I don't know, like I want to track these folks down and talk to them because allegedly it can be done. I don't know how they did it, but you know, if someone says, "Hey, I have to be a PhD in this field in order to," I don't know, maybe it's theoretically possible, but there are people out there supposedly who have done it.
Mm.
So overall, what's your recommendation to veterans? It's, give a one liner, maybe a 30-second speech that says, "Hey, I want to know about VR&E." What's the first thing you want to tell them?
The first thing I would tell somebody if they say I want to know about VR&E is make sure you have a plan and that you're able to vocalize with your counselor why you need VR&E. Because that's what's going to get you that benefit is if you can explain to them what you're going to do with it and why you feel like it's necessary for you.
Absolutely. Great advice. And I tell exactly the same thing is to go in with a good understanding. One of the things anyone out there can do is email me first, greg@codeplatoon.org. I can share a lot of resources with you. I can point you in the right direction of how to do this. Whether or not you come to Code Platoon, that's another issue. Of course, I want you to try to come to Code Platoon, but if you don't, I'm still going to help you because we're in the business of helping veterans and kind of give you some guidance on how you can best use your VR&E benefits. So, but touching on that, Marion, somebody who's on the fence about coming to Code Platoon, what do you tell them? What's your advice? Coming to Code Platoon, good or bad? How has your life changed?
I would say do it 100%. My life has changed so much since I've been through Code Platoon. Um, yeah, I don't really have a lot of words. Just just do it. It
That's
was a
great
great
to hear.
experience.
That's great. That's what we want to hear. I mean, I haven't interviewed anyone yet who said, "No, don't do it." But, I don't know that they'd come and talk to me if they thought that anyway. It might be a selection bias, but no, everybody has good feelings overall. And it's great to see people who've had this positive impact. Even though you weren't doing a bad job, there, obviously being a physical therapist, not a bad job, right? But you were in a role where you couldn't see yourself continuing down that path based on injuries, based on health, based on your quality of life, that whole component. That's what VR&E is for. And so anyone out there, who says, "Hey, I've got like me, I've got a broken hip, I've got C-spine injuries. I sitting in a chair is way better than, welding. I don't know, pick one out of a hat. It's really hard to do physical jobs, and so I have to have certain types of jobs. That's what VR&E is for. So please look into it out there. If you're a veteran and you're considering this, maybe you're getting out, you don't know what to do, how to use your benefits, please come talk to us. So shifting gears here because we're almost out of time. Like I said, it's be a short conversation. We keep it casual. I like to shift gears a little bit. We're going to add one question. I do typically do two unserious questions. We're going to do three. So number one, what music are you listening to now? What's on your playlist, top of your playlist right now?
Oh man, yeah, this is a bit of an unpopular opinion. I have a lot of jazz right now on my playlist.
Oh, what specifically? What kind? I'm a huge Miles Davis fan. So
Oh
just
yeah.
for the record, I'm a huge Miles Davis fan.
So I'm a guitar player, so I listen to a lot of Joe Pass. That's my thing right now.
Fantastic. I as well hack away at the six strings, not very effectively, but I try. So that's really cool to hear. That's awesome. Okay, so next question: best movie of the last. We'll go 2 years. Best movie of the last 2 years for you.
Oh man, that's a tough one right there. I'm trying to see if I had any movies that I've seen that I think are really good in the last 2 years. I'm a pretty big Marvel fan, so I probably would say I don't know. Did the last Spider-Man come out in the last 2 years? No?
I think it's a little bit more than that, but we'll
A
go
little
with
more.
that.
Okay.
Homecoming, right, was the last one.
Yeah, that one was pretty good.
We'll
Yeah.
allow it. We'll allow it. And since at work, and I'm not a huge football fan, but everybody at work is talking about football.
Oh,
Who's gonna win the Super Bowl? Who's gonna win? Come on,
yeah.
give me a pick. I don't even know who's in the playoffs to be, or if the playoffs have started. I don't even know.
Hey, I live in Minnesota now. I'm a Minnesotan, so I'm gonna say the Vikings.
Go with the hometown. Yes, it's a safe pick. I live in the Colorado. I'm in Colorado, and I don't think the Broncos are going anywhere anytime soon. Like I said, I'm not a huge football fan, but I know enough to know that the Broncos are not doing well the last couple of years. Any final thoughts? Anything at all?
Let me see. Yeah, I would just say for anybody out there that's, trying to look into getting a Code Platoon or VR&E, just, know about all your resources, look into all your benefits. And if you're trying to go to Code Platoon, do it. It's probably one of the biggest life-changing things I've done in my whole life. So,
Well, thank you for the endorsement to all of you watching. We're going to put a link in the comments for a blog that we do on VR&E to let you know about that. Again, that you can email me, greg@codeplatoon.org. Marion, he's out there learning Joe Pass songs, which are way beyond my ability. I'm going to tell you right now. I can tell you he's better than me just by the fact that he's learning Joe Pass. And Marion, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you having this conversation with me. Because again, VR&E, it's an important benefit. A lot of people don't know they have. They don't even know that it exists. So if you're a veteran, yeah, look into it. VR&E, Veterans Readiness and Employment, and then come check us out at Code Platoon. We'll have a conversation. So, Marion, thanks again for your time. Like I said, we'll keep it short, sweet, to the point. And if you have, unless you have any other thoughts, no.
nope.
All right, cool. Well, hey, thanks everyone for joining us again on this episode of Veteran Voices in Code. I'm your host, Greg Drobny. You can email me anytime, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks all. Thanks, Marion. Appreciate it.
Thank you.